It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed it does, and good to have you with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. And we have a lot to get to over the next 60 minutes, including a conversation with Nick Ferguson, the former NFL safety, joins us throughout the football season. And we'll get some thoughts with him on NFL training camps, some of the top stories there. Obviously, the Broncos will be top of mind with him being based in Denver, but also the news coming out of Boulder yesterday with Deion Sanders and the revelation of his bladder cancer diagnosis, treatment, the fact that he says there is no cancer as of now, which is the best news of all. We will talk about that as well with Nick Ferguson coming up. Barry Bloom is a Baseball Hall of Fame voter, part of the Baseball Writers Association of America. He's with Sportico. He knows a lot about the career and life of Ryne Sandberg, and we will talk about the passing of Ryne Sandberg with him, his life and legacy. Other baseball news, Eugenio Suarez injured last night for the Diamondbacks, as that team probably holds their breath as they are in the middle of basically trying to trade him as they offload some of their pieces of that puzzle. What could that hand injury possibly do as far as that is concerned? And Bryce Harper making some interesting news. Certainly a headline I didn't expect to see yesterday as it pertains to him. All of that and more coming up on the show. But we start in a place, Sam, that I don't think I ever would have anticipated starting this show with. And you see the headline at the top of the screen. This tragic shooting that took place in New York at the building that houses the NFL headquarters, 345 Park Avenue, a place I am very familiar with. I literally used to work just a couple of blocks away from there for a number of years when I lived in New York and had been by the NFL headquarters and offices a bunch of times, as is Nick Ferguson, who I was texting with about it last night. And you get this story that has come out, and you're saying, well, why are they talking about this on SportsWrap? Well, as the story developed last night, and the tragedy in this story, let's be clear, is the loss of life of 4 innocent individuals, one of them being a New York City police officer who was working in an off-duty capacity, but in uniform. Father of 2, about to become a father of a 3rd child, with his wife being pregnant, just 36 years old, an immigrant from Bangladesh, who had joined the New York City Police Department just 3.5 years ago, losing his life as well as 3 others in this tragic shooting that took place at the hands of a 27-year-old from Las Vegas, where I reside now, who literally drove across country to perpetrate this heinous crime. But there is a subplot to the story that cannot be ignored, and I fear that it will be ignored by certain media partners that are in bed with the NFL, which is why I felt the need to lead with this today on the show, Sam, and that is the note that was found on the shooter, who is known to have issues with mental illness. It was known to police authorities and law enforcement here in Las Vegas, which still begs the question, how did he ever get a gun when he was known to have had issues with mental illness? Those are the last people you usually want carrying around firearms, let alone an M4, into New York where he carried out this crime. But the aspect of this story, Sam, is the suicide note, essentially, that was attached to this man, which basically says he was going for the NFL headquarters. He was going for the NFL offices. Now, he couldn't get in the right elevator, so he wound up going to the 33rd floor where he killed somebody else. But he was going there to go to the NFL headquarters. And the reason was, he said he was suffering from CTE. And a very notable part of this story, Sam, is the fact that this person took his own life by shooting himself in the chest. And I know that sounds macabre, and why, Jason, are you talking about this? Because in the note he says, I want my brain studied for signs of CTE. And this was somebody who played football in high school, was a successful player at that level, I guess, was a running back, I guess. And he has asked for his brain to be studied. And I hope they do, because this is still an issue for the NFL. And this is still something that has to be discussed, despite the fact that they can talk about, well, concussion numbers are down and all this. It is still repeated head trauma that is an issue for the NFL. And as much as the NFL's media partners are not going to want to talk about this, Sam, and the perfect example of it was Get Up on Tuesday morning. I watched for an hour, not a single peep about this, where you literally had somebody going to the NFL headquarters to carry out a shooting. They're not talking about it at all. It might be on their website, but they're not talking about it on TV, which is where the bulk of their audience is. Sam, what do you make of this story, and is it going to bring CTE back into the spotlight?
No. I think that this, you said it within the whole point, right? This was a person with a documented mental health history who, like you said, Jason, for countless reasons, never should have gotten access to the things that he used to perpetrate this entire event. The thing about head trauma and CTE specifically, and obviously you mentioned the way that the guy committed suicide, it's the same way that Junior Seau committed suicide back, 10 years ago at this point. And that's the reasoning, right? That was the reasoning that Junior Seau used. And I think that there's some level of assumption based on this particular person's age that you could assume that they saw that widely reported story when it broke and got an idea from it all these years later. I do not think that this is going to affect the way that we view CTE, again, because of where head trauma is in the NFL right now and the level it has been reduced, the exponential level it's been reduced in a very short period of time. It's not the same it's not the same safety protocols that were in line 7, 8, even 5 years ago. So I think the level of progress that the NFL has made and the level of innovation that we continue to see into the sport year in and year out, even over the last 3 years, right, has dropped that level of these crazy head injuries that we were so used to seeing for so many decades.
Well, now, it may reduce the number of documented head injuries, but it is still the repeated head trauma that is taking place, the unknowns that we just don't know because it's impossible to study the brain until these guys have died. That is, to me, still the sort of the crux of the story, that from a young age, you've got kids playing football. I'm not even talking about the NFL necessarily, Sam. I think this is just a broader issue on football in general, because you still got kids who are banging heads at the youth football level all the way up until they get to the NFL. And I think that's where the attention needs to be. Just the overall safety of football when it comes to the human brain. We'll talk about it more with Nick Ferguson, who joins us in just a couple of minutes. NFL talk with him, college as well, next. Welcome back to Sports Wrap on this Tuesday, and I am always delighted when we can say hello to this guy. Except when he doesn't respond to my text messages. Man I admire, longtime friend of this show and other shows I have done, former NFL safety Nick Ferguson on the show, ladies and gentlemen, hanging out with us on this Tuesday. And Nick, always appreciate you coming on. So, especially now, because I know you got Broncos training camp going on. I know that's keeping you busy out there in Denver. So let me start things out with where we just left off, which is this conversation about head trauma. And while the tragedy of this story are the 4 people that lost their lives, and we have made sure to make that clear, including this young NYPD police officer, this 36-year-old, who leaves behind 2 kids and a wife carrying a third. While that is the tragedy of this story and the lives lost, it cannot be lost, the subplot in this, of a young man driving from Las Vegas to the NFL headquarters in New York to carry out a shooting and making it clear that the reason he's carrying it out was he thought he was suffering from CTE. Now, they're going to study his brain. He shot himself in the chest, which is, again, macabre to even discuss. But he did it for that reason. He obviously wanted his brain to be studied. And while Sam and I were talking in the last segment, he was saying, well, the NFL's done so much more to mitigate head injuries and concussions and all that it's doing. But it still doesn't necessarily mitigate the inherent danger of just constant collisions. and concussions that still aren't diagnosed, and the head trauma that starts at an early age playing football. We see some of the hits that take place even at the youth football level, to where you are by the time you get into your 20s or 30s, that this sort of thing could still be a story, and it's still a problem for football at large, isn't it?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for having me, and I want to say condolences to all the people who we lost in New York. This is kind of a sleeping giant when you really think about what CTE is. CTE cannot be predetermined once you're alive. They have to go back and slice up your brain and look at sections of it. But if you know that you're an individual and you playing a physical sport, you have to be mindful of that. And I know it blew up that narrative that, okay, well, here's a guy who played football. He drove all the way from Vegas to New York City. Yep. And just so happens, it's 3045 Park Avenue, and it's all these organizations within the building, but more importantly, it's the NFL office. I'll say this. I know some guys who are battling, mental issues. Thankfully, I haven't experienced anything like that. All my issues are body issues, but I'll say this, and it may not be a popular perspective, but this is just the way I think. If you know that you are having some issues, and what they said was what they found in the car, they found some kind of medication. They didn't describe what the medication was. They found medication. But if you, as an individual, knowing that you have some issues, this is not the way to handle it. Right? If you are suffering from CTE, this is not the way to handle it. You don't go and take the lives of 4 other innocent people. You just don't do that, because how did you make the issue much better? And if you wanted to bring attention to it, there's so many media outlets that you can go to and do that and bring that up. You can grab your own phone and talk about the issues that you're going through, or you suffer, or you think you're suffering from, mentally due to the contact sport. But don't blow up the scene like this and put it in a situation where now individuals are going to start to look at those who played a contact sport like myself and think that we are ticking time bombs. So that paints a negative narrative for all of us who have played football. This is not the way, or in my opinion, right, to handle the situations, and I'm not a fan of taking lives at all. Once again, more research needs to be done. It's a bigger conversation. We have to continue to talk about it. The league has done some things over the years to help with helmet development. And I don't know if you and I talked about this once before. When you look at how the NFL has changed the kickoff rules, I'm a fan of taking that and implementing that on every level of football, from college to high school, because now you're getting these players introduced to and acclimated before they even get to the pros. So if the whole idea is you want to reduce concussions with the information that we all know now the idea is, okay, well, you are building the future athletes or the football players of tomorrow. Start them early. Start them really early. To me, hopefully, this is going to be one of those situations that everyone continues to talk about, and it just is not one of those stories that just kind of go away. But now there's a bigger story. Continue to talk about it, and let's try to teach these younger players on the smaller levels how you're going to do things or be expected to do things on the NFL level.
Nick, the other big story going on around the NFL is obviously this whole fallout with Lloyd Howell and J.C. Tretter and the top brass of the NFLPA. Obviously, you've got experience in that realm, a ton of it. What would your mindset be as a member of any one of these 32 NFL teams right now?
Well, Sam, I would be frustrated. I would feel as though a group of guys failed me. That the fact that you were supposed to look out for me, not just me individually, but all the other members of the league. And it doesn't seem as though that happened. Why would you conceal some information away from players that was vital to them from a contractual standpoint? Because you made an agreement with the league. I mean, I thought we were in this together, right? One team, one brotherhood. But it doesn't seem like that the more of this information that starts to come out. And, they always say the head rots from the top. What were you guys doing at that time? Were you asleep at the wheel? Did you just put it all in Lloyd's hand because He said that he had corporate experience and he's worked with guys and he's negotiated. So you say, okay, well, let's go out and get a guy who's familiar with the corporate culture, because the NFL is viewed as a corporate culture and a business within itself. But at the same time, there was one element missing. You were not thinking about the players. So trying to get to the bottom of this and finally get answers, that's never going to happen. But if I'm a player in the current NFLPA, I'm a little upset because I feel as though you have failed us from a leadership standpoint, because your job, you were getting paid $3.6 million to look after our interests. That's what you were supposed to do, but you didn't do it. So now I'm upset and I'm looking at, well, who's going to lead us forward? Now, I'll tell you guys this. I threw it out on social media that Tony Dungy, I would love to see Tony Dungy as the next executive director. If not, I will allow him to be a part of that process and vetting the next person, because he's been a player in this league. He's been a successful coach in this league. He's a God-fearing man. Some people don't like that idea, but I think because he's a God-fearing man, more of his morals and ethics are going to be at the forefront of his mind, and that's what type of person you need to lead the NFLPA moving forward.
We're talking with Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, hanging out with us on the show. One more segment with him. We're coming back on SportsWrap. Welcome back to the show. Hanging out with Nick Ferguson, former NFL safety, friend of the program. Tony Dungy, huh? Not. I think some of the anti-LGBTQ rhetoric stuff is going to hurt him. It's just, there's no getting around it. You can say God-fearing all you want. I think some of that would hurt his cause as it pertains to trying to be the executive director. Let me ask you this. Do you think there is a clamoring for somebody like that? Have you talked to other people? Is anybody trying to talk Tony Dungy into trying to throw his hat into the ring for that?
Great question.
Well, yeah, I've spoken to a couple of individuals and I've tossed that name out, and automatically goes, yeah, he sounds like a great person to be involved with the process. Not everyone loves it and everyone has their different reasons, almost like a 50-50. But for me, like I said, even if he is not the executive director, having him be a part of the process in selecting the next executive director, I think is important. Also, I'll throw in a guy, Joe Briggs. Briggs has been like a counsel for the PA for 16 plus years. I think now he is he's a professor at Georgetown. He's a lawyer as well. I mean, he has experience with the NFLPA. I'll even throw out another person, my teammate, Hall of Fame center, Kevin Mawai. Kevin was involved with the PA for so many years.
Yeah.
So for me, it's you got to throw a bunch of names out there, because the first vetting process, like when they hired a search firm, obviously they didn't do that well. So you can't go back to another search firm or the same search firm, or better yet, the executive committee who was in the room, pushing this along with Lord Howell. Those individuals can't be involved with this process. They're compromised now. For me, you got to get a whole entire executive committee and start the process over. But the thing that makes it difficult, and the timing can't be it's just awful. Guys are going into training camp.
Yeah.
You're trying to compete for a job. You don't have time to.
This is what I said. I said this last week.
Director.
Yep.
Right. So now you could try to squeeze someone in the interim, and how well is that person going to do? For me, the owners are sitting back with their feet up like, see, we got them now. Yeah. So now you need someone to come in with a voice and who has morals, has ethics, but those are the three people that I tossed out.
How stunning was the Deion Sanders news yesterday, the revelation of bladder cancer and having his bladder removed, and the fact that he didn't, really reveal it to his players until recently. What do you make of this whole situation? We obviously wish the best for him, but what do you make of this situation and how it portends, as far as his future is concerned with the program?
Well, obviously, being in a situation like this, anyone being diagnosed with cancer, and they say they kind of take it out, and he's doing well. With cancer, you never know. You just hope and pray for the best. And this may be something that will galvanize a lot of those players, because we know in Boulder, everyone is really excited. No matter what the record is for the CU Buff, all eyes are on Colorado. More eyes will be on Colorado now. And just being in the situation he's in, I couldn't even imagine. But here's what he did. Being a father, these are the things that you do as a parent. You shield your kids from all the things that you deal with as a parent. You don't tell them. And you don't tell them to maybe the 25th hour, and that's what he wanted to do. I mean, he has daughters, he has sons. Two of his sons are on NFL teams.
Right.
And I remember during the first part of OTA's minicamp, Shedeur Sanders was asked about his dad's health, and he kind of, brushed it off because he's like, well, I don't know, what's going on with my dad. My dad seems fine, but you don't want that added distraction. I can tell you right now, competing for a job in NFL and seeing where both his sons are, you don't want that extra weight. That extra weight weighs on you. It makes it really difficult for you to make the team. And Shallow is in one situation, but when you think about Shedeur, everyone's talking about him. Will he make the team? Why he's not getting first team reps? And then to know now, no one's talking about football. They're not going to be asking him questions about his father's mortality. I mean, you don't want to deal with that. Those are the questions that you don't. But, I'm proud of Coach Prime and watching him do that press conference yesterday. He was happy. He was jovial. And I was sitting there watching it with my wife, like, I don't know how he's taking it in this particular way, because I would feel a little different. But I'm a God-fearing man. He's a God-fearing man. So he's just putting everything in the hands of God and just hope that things work out for him.
Nick, I wanted to talk about Shedeur Sanders for just a second, because Jason and I talked yesterday. There were some interesting comments by Louis Riddick over the weekend with regard to how the Cleveland front office may be viewing their quarterback situation and how it could be potentially embarrassing in a football sense for them to have to start their 5th round pick over their 3rd round pick over two guys who they brought in this offseason. You've obviously been in this situation a ton before. You've seen in training camp a ton of battles, I can only imagine, between guys who maybe a more talented 5th round pick, but a more talented or a more touted 3rd round pick, I should say. Kind of what is your input? What do you feel about a training camp battle with two guys at the same position, one who a team used much more draft capital on, but the other who may have a bigger, better story behind him?
It's the art of competition. This is what this time of the year is all about. And I've seen situations, and I've been in rooms where maybe a scout or a coach had his guy, but his guy wasn't that guy that was chosen. He was a 5th round pick, or he was a free agent. And the idea is that we can't allow that guy to leapfrog this other guy, because it's going to make us look bad. It's going to make our judgment look bad. But in this case, Cleveland is in a position where, you know what? May the best man win the job. That's the way that they should look at it. I'm a baseball. Now they become like this place where all media is focused on, almost like what Shedeur experienced in Boulder. But right now, you have your pick of a litter as far as your quarterback situation. We can say that, Joe Flacco's not the future. Neither is Deshaun Watson. So you got 3 other young guys. And oh, by the way, I think Cleveland has 2 first-round picks in next year's draft as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
so for them, and everyone's thinking, well, you know what? If none of these guys work out, you go out and you draft another quarterback. No. One of these guys you need to work out, because this Cleveland team is talented. It needs to get better. And if you can use 2 of those first-round picks next year to make your team better with one of those guys, whether it's Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, then you do that. So hopefully we watch this thing play out, and one of those guys kind of elevate their level of play.
Yeah, I've got a much bigger, longer take on Shedeur Sanders and sort of this Browns quarterback situation. We don't have time to get to it, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. That's a tease for tomorrow's show. I've got some things to say about this Browns situation. Nick Ferguson, I always appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for hanging out.
Appreciate you guys.
We're coming back. All right, we take it to segment 4 on this Tuesday edition of SportsWrap. It has been a crazy last few days in the sports world, and we all had to stop and take a second to remember the life of Ryne Sandberg, who passed away on Monday night. We learned of his passing after a lengthy battle with cancer at the age of 65. And I thought no better guy to bring in to talk about the life and the legacy of Ryne Sandberg than a guy who probably was one of the voters that put him in. I would imagine you were a voter then for the Hall of Fame. Barry Bloom of Sportico, who joins us, member of the Baseball Writers Association of America. Barry, this is a guy who, and it's so trite to say these things, but he really is. He wasn't just a Hall of Fame player. He was a Hall of Fame person.
Well, yeah, and I've been a Hall of Fame voter since 1992.
Okay.
So Sandberg fell well within my bailiwick, and obviously he was an automatic for me. Even though basically I covered the Padres, the greatest obviously moments that I had covering Sandberg was the 1984 playoff series between the Padres and the Cubs, when he was just a kid, and Dallas Green had pilfered him from the Phillies in as the second player on a deal for Larry Boa, and he traded Ivan DeJesus. And since Dallas knew the organization, he said, "Yeah, well, why don't you send me this minor league infielder named Sandberg along with Boa?" And he made the deal. And obviously, Boa was the shortstop on the team, and Sandberg was the second baseman. So, looking down the road, bad trade for the Phillies.
You think about it. It is one, and a lot of people forget that he came into the league. You think of him as a lifetime Cub, but he wasn't. He came into the league, obviously, with the Phillies. And boy, we talk about some of the all-time bad trades in the history of baseball, and Ryne Sandberg was definitely a part of it.
Yeah, definitely from the Phillies' point of view. And, had Dallas not left the Phillies, because he was obviously managed the Phillies during their 1980 to 83 run, he knew the organization inside out. He would have never gone to the Cubs.
Were you? I didn't get a chance to ask you this beforehand. Were you in Cooperstown this weekend?
Yes, I was. It was a great weekend. It really was a lot of fun.
How much was he top of mind? As far as people talking about him, knowing that his situation was kind of grave at this point.
Well, if you remember, and it probably went by a lot of people, but when James Forbes Clark, in her introductory speech, kicking off the whole festivities, she quoted Rhino from his induction speech, which probably was one of the most incredible induction speeches of all time, because most people talk about their families, they talk about life, but Rhino did an impassioned rendition of his, his take on the game, the steroid era at that time, the fact that Andre Dawson hadn't gotten into the Hall and he had played clean, and he did a full-throated backing of Dawson's candidacy. And really, it was one of the most impassioned speeches that I've ever heard there. And I've been to 22 or 23 of these induction ceremonies. So, yeah, I think that Jane would not have led off the festivities with a quote from Rhino, and she didn't even mention his situation. But I had already known that he was in home hospice and that the minutes were ticking down. And so how many people followed it? I'm really not sure. But, what he went through was pretty harrowing. And for the life of me, I don't understand why he was first diagnosed with grade 4 prostate cancer, when if you catch it early, it's one of the easiest cancers to beat.
I'm curious to get your thoughts on Ryne Sandberg, the Hall of Famer, that he got in a third year, I think, on the ballot. If somebody like Ryne Sandberg with his stat line, take the name away, if he comes up for a vote now, is somebody with that stat line getting in?
Well, I think that part of Sandberg's problem, and you run into it with candidates at times, is that there's a short lifeline of how many years he played, and his career was truncated by all the stuff, and all the rumors about why he quit his career to try and save his marriage and what happened behind the scenes. But his career ended really after 12 seasons, I think it was. I'm just doing that off the top of my head. And then by the time everything was settled with his marriage, and that was over, and he remarried his current widow, who is lovely, Margaret, and they combined families, and he tried to come back and resurrect his career. It was too late because his skill set was basically had eroded enough that he just couldn't come back and play in the major leagues anymore. So, I mean, he was one of these rare players, and he's such a good person that he decided to try and deal with his personal life at the expense of having a long-term career. And there are a lot of other people who might not have done that. I mean, Steve Garvey was one of them, and he was not going to quit his career for hell or high water because of what was going on with his Cindy Garvey in his first marriage.
Barry Bloom, Hall of Fame voter, Baseball Writers Association of America with Sportico as well. I asked you about that 5 or 6 years ago about Buster Posey when he was just winding down his career, and I remember saying to you, I think he's a Hall of Famer, and I hope he does get in. Barry, I always appreciate you. Thank you for coming on short notice today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
We're coming back. Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes with some NFL. The Christian Wilkins story that just gets stranger and stranger by the second. It is odd, that is for sure. It puts the odd in Odds and Ends. Sam Yarnell, some more baseball, kind of moving off our conversation with Barry Bloom of Sportico, who's a Hall of Fame voter. I appreciate him joining us from New York today. I want to get your thoughts on, if you're the Diamondbacks, you're already like trading off all your assets and making it clear you don't think you can contend this year. And then you got Eugenio Suarez up at the plate, and he gets plunked in the hand, your most valuable asset that you're trying to move, that you're trying to bring in a haul for, and he gets plunked in the hand last night, comes out of the game right away, which certainly had to raise some eyebrows around baseball. Now, x-rays after the game were negative. Mind you, we do this show in the late morning hours, East Coast time. We don't know if there's been an update to this story since we put the show together, Sam, but there's a chance he could miss some extended time. I don't think it changes the calculus that much if you're a team, though, because at some point he's going to be ready to play again this year, and he certainly adds a lot to whoever he goes to, but still, for the Diamondbacks, you got to be sitting there going, like, really?
Yeah, so it seems like there are reports of disaster averted, which is a great thing, but it is weird because finger injuries, specifically taking a pitch off of a finger, is like historically associated with losing power, which is Eugenio Suarez's best ability right now. And as a baseball player, like, he has top 5 power in Major League Baseball. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I still think the Diamondbacks will be able to get, I don't think the return per se will be all that affected. I don't think that this will maybe get them the 10th best prospect in a team system as opposed to the 8th best prospect. It's marginal in that regard. It does matter for whoever picks him up. It becomes more of a gamble that you're taking on Eugenio Suarez. I think that you now look at teams that are a little bit more secure in it not panning out. I'm looking directly at you, Seattle Mariners. I still think that that is the best fit. I do think it takes the teams like the Cincinnati Reds out of the running, who were kind of that, let's get one kind of cornerstone sort of piece and we're that guy away from a real playoff push. That's not what the Reds are going to be getting at this point with Eugenio Suarez. So it changes the market on him in terms of what teams are interested in my eyes, but it doesn't necessarily change the market on him in terms of what the return for him will be. That is very marginal, I believe.
You really think it's marginal? You don't think for a guy who's like 3rd in the league in home runs, you don't think there's going to be like, or 4th in the league, whatever he is in home runs? Yeah. You don't think they're getting like a huge prospect package for him?
Well, I'm not
I think
saying
they're holding
that. I'm
out.
saying
I think
that
they're
I don't
certainly
think this
holding out for
injury
that.
changes the size of that prospect package, right? Like if it were huge before, or if it were tiny before, it'll be very marginally less huge now, or very marginally less tiny.
Okay, that's fair. I don't have a problem with that. All right, let's talk about Bryce Harper, because apparently there was a kerfuffle between he and the commissioner of Major League Baseball, that being Rob Manfred. So Manfred's been trying to do outreach. I guess he knew that his reputation with players around the league wasn't very good. And over the last couple of years, he's been trying to do outreach by actually going into locker rooms and having these meetings with teams as a group. And apparently the one that he had with the Philadelphia Phillies did not go exactly as he had planned. He goes in, and when the conversation starts to turn inevitably to the future of the game and future collective bargaining and the idea of a potential salary cap coming to Major League Baseball, the only sport that does not have any sort of salary cap, things got contentious between he and Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper got up in his face with a baseball bat in hand, mind you, and said, "Get the F out of our locker room." To which Manfred fired back at him and said, "No, I'm not going to get the F out of your locker room." Cooler heads did eventually prevail. As much as we'll want to make this about a Bryce Harper story, I think the bigger overarching theme is December of 2026, not that far away, 18 months away? And it feels like we've got two trains headed at each other on the same track, and neither one is stopping, and we are looking and staring at a potential work stoppage in Major League Baseball because owners are going to want a salary cap, and there's no way the players are going to give them that.
Yeah, so the important thing that Bryce Harper said to me in that whole reported altercation, which was ridiculous on Bryce Harper's part, was that we're not afraid to give up 162, I believe was the actual quote. I'll just tell you this, Bryce Harper, you are living in a baseball world that has been built up by people outside of yourself because you were the chosen one who continued to let your team down and then had this really weird free agency stint that was capped off by the team you left winning the World Series, whatever. There were a ton of people that came after Bryce Harper who have built baseball up on this pedestal where it's at. Baseball is doing so well right now. And for a mid-tier star at best in Bryce Harper to come out and speak for the entirety of the Players Association and threaten to take away an entire season from a game that is growing at a rate almost as rapidly as when we saw during the steroid era seems quite frankly ridiculous. And if Bryce Harper wants to be that frank in that he cares way more about money than he does about baseball, and he cares way more about his own job than he does about the thousands and thousands of baseball players that would be affected by a lockout, that's all fine and well.
Bryce Harper could speak for himself, and he might speak for other guys that are making tons of money. I think where he loses this battle is the mid-tier guys and the lower-tier guys that don't have tons of service time, don't make tons of money. Those are the guys that are looking at him going, you said what? All right. Wrap it up in just a couple of moments here on the show. But before we do, a couple of reminders. First of all, SportsWrap with Jason Page, the podcast. If you are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? It is this show in its audio form, the purest form of all, where you don't see our faces or the goofy shirts that I'm wearing on a day in doubt. This is the Netherlands soccer jersey, by the way, that we're sporting today, courtesy of Adidas. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, it is the show without the video, just in its audio form, commercial-free, Monday through Friday on all your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere you get a podcast. You can also watch this show on Spotify Monday through Friday, available early every afternoon, most afternoons. Sometimes we're a little delayed, but usually early afternoon. It's one of the first places you can get it is on Spotify, and on our YouTube channel you can watch the show as well. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel is there for you Monday through Friday. Watch the show commercial free every afternoon. One other thing to throw in here. Sam, you don't even know about this, so I'm going to bring you in so I can see your like natural reaction to it. On Thursday, Sam, if you're available and want to hop on this, you're more than welcome. Just shows you how organized I am. I don't know what your Thursday afternoon looks like. I know you're busy with your other job. We are doing a trade deadline show leading into the MLB trade deadline on Thursday afternoon from 2 to 3 p.m. with myself and David Ardsma. Sam, you're welcome to hang out with us as well. The door is open. I know you have other stuff and work commitments, which is why I didn't even mention it to you. So we're having this conversation live on television right now. I'm telling you for the first time, you are invited. Trade deadline special leading into the trade deadline and a few minutes beyond on Thursday afternoon. There you go.
Well, I'll have to keep the viewers in the dark on whether or not I'll be there. You'll have to tune in to find out. We'll keep it a surprise.
That will be live on our YouTube channel, the SportsWrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Now you got another reason to tune in and subscribe there. All right, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. The Christian Wilkins story just gets weirder and weirder. I was on a local Las Vegas TV station yesterday that we did a whole half hour on the Raiders. I was a panelist with a bunch of guys, and of course the first thing they wanted to talk about was Christian Wilkins and the kiss on the forehead. It was like a mob movie. He kissed a guy on the forehead or on the top of their head. The player took umbrage with it. I don't think this was ultimately why Christian Wilkins was released by the Las Vegas Raiders, but it certainly didn't help, apparently, Sam.
Yeah, I'm actually, so there was a report that came out yesterday, last night, or I guess after this Schefter report of the forehead kissing incident, that is not the story that is making its way around NFL circles. So it seems like there could be another layer to this that we haven't found out about yet. But yeah, weird. I don't expect to see this guy again in the NFL.
Really?
Let alone anytime soon.
He's too talented to not be picked up by somebody.
I
Come
don't
on,
know,
I could go through the litany of names.
The allegations are out there. The allegations against that Clemson team from back in the day. I mean, you had Christian Wilkins on one side, you had Deshaun Watson on the other.
Well, we'll see how it all shakes down for Christian Wilkins, who's, by the way, he's probably going to have surgery again. They're talking about potentially he could miss another 12 weeks. So if he's back, it'll be later in the season. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Stephen Jones, the son of Jerry Jones, making some interesting comments regarding Micah Parsons and his contract holdout. Not holdout, it's a hold in because he's playing. He's at training camp. So we want to make sure we're clear on that. But Micah Parsons is at camp. They're trying to get a contract worked out. Stephen Jones said, well, it's just, we want to get a deal worked out. He has to want to get a deal worked out too. And a lot of people are trying to read between the lines on what Stephen Jones meant when he said that. Some are suggesting maybe Micah Parsons is waiting and betting on himself and waiting to see where the chips fall with somebody like Trey Hendrickson before, making a decision on a contract. I don't know. It's, again, just another day in Jerry world in the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, what a stupid operating procedure the Dallas Cowboys have. Again, I've talked about it on the show before. I'll talk about it here now. This is what they do, and this is why they are broke and always bad. Because they have a couple of star players, and they wait way too long to give them contracts, and because of that, they are always paying at the top of the market rather than resetting the market. It's actually very basic economics that I'm quite surprised that the Jones family has still not figured out. This contract would have been cheaper 2 months ago. It would have been cheaper a month ago. It's going to get more expensive by the day. They better hope they do it before Trey Hendrickson, because if they don't, it is going to get more expensive yet still. The Trey Hendrickson thing separately is a little bit interesting because it seems like on that side, it's much more of a brass tacks thing. And like Trey Hendrickson being on his third contract as opposed to his second contract, and the Bengals wanting to handle that a specific way, and Trey Hendrickson still taking time to buy into that. The Micah situation, do not get it confused, is completely different and much messier. This is not going to end well for the Cowboys. They are not going to be competitive. They'll be talented, but they won't be competitive.
I think they get a deal done, though. It's It's just a question of when. The deal will get done.
Yeah, but they're going to overpay, and then they won't be competitive because they don't have any room left to pay anyone else.
The deal will get done. The one that I am becoming more concerned about is what's going on with Trey Hendrickson, which we'll talk about tomorrow on the show. We're out of time. We got to go. Thanks to Barry Bloom. Thanks to Nick Ferguson. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. We'll see you all back here for a Wednesday Sports Wrap. Bye!